Hey, I'm Juan. I want to discuss Peloton. Should I take some of this hard-earned money and invest it, hoping for a short squeeze, or is it a waste of money? So 2 things we need to learn about before we take a look at Peloton to see if it's a potential short squeeze or just a waste of money. We need to understand what a short squeeze is and what the dark pool is. So let's start off with a short squeeze. What happens during a short squeeze? The short sellers increased, but they weren't expecting any positive news or any catalyst to cause the stock to go up. Most short sellers don't expect this. Peloton had some positive news. The CEO came and said that we're not shutting down production. Then he stepped down, which is negative, but it's also positive. The company made $4 billion, but still had no net profit. So maybe it's mismanagement. And the new CEO, Barry McCarthy, was the CEO at Spotify and Netflix. Someone with experience, which is positive news. The stock's been on a major uptrend now. Will the shorters take their positions back and cause a squeeze? So we have to look at a few things. We have to look at the short interest, the short float, how many shares are circulating, how many shares are actually shorted, and we also have to look at days to cover. Days to cover is pretty important when you're trying to identify if something is a short squeeze. The longer the days to cover, the more possibility for a short squeeze. And what does days to cover mean? Let's say there's 1 million shares shorted and the average trading volume is about 100,000, then 10 would be the days to cover. Next, let's understand what the dark pool is. And no, it's not that. The dark pool, it was basically created for institutional investors. These institutions that buy hundreds of thousands, if not millions of shares. Let's say you have an institutional investor that wants to buy or sell 1 million shares of a certain company. If he does it on the publicly traded platform, that can cause a lot of volatility towards that stock to buy 1 million shares. If he tries to break it up in 4 or 5 trades, a couple 100,000 here or there, it can affect his position. They created this dark pool, which emerged in 1980, where these institutional investors can sell and buy large blocks of shares without affecting the publicly traded price. So if there's a large number of shorting going on in the dark pool, it can also affect and cause potential short squeeze. So overall, is Peloton a good company? Well, they've made $4 billion in revenue, which is a positive thing. Possible mismanagement because they've been negative in the net profit, even with increasing their revenue by so much over the last couple years. I think Tom Nash summed it up perfectly when he said that people are not going to spend $4,000 for a stationary bike with an iPad and miss out on the gym interaction. Looking at the financials, like we mentioned, 2017, they sold quite a few, making $216 million, then doubled that, then doubled again, and doubled again. So they've just almost doubled their revenue just every year, which is excellent, which is what you want to see for a company that's still growing. The only issue is their cost of revenue also increased drastically. You see here their cost of revenue, how much it costs them to actually make these bikes. And then the indirect cost of revenue, I like to call it indirect, like the sales, general, admin, R&D expenses, is also high. Their first year in 2017, they were negative $70 million in net profit. Their revenue was $216. Once they subtracted the cost to actually make the bike, then the cost to sell the bike, they were negative $70 million. Next year, they doubled their revenue and their net income, negative $46 million instead of 70. Then 2020 was their best year, negative income, $20 million. 2021, negative income, $125 million. In the trailing 12 months so far, negative $527 million. This may be one of the reasons that the new CEO plans on slashing 2,800 jobs, but the topic is short squeeze. So let's take a first look here. The short interest has changed by positive 3%. Estimated short interest is 14%, which is high. Anything in the double digits is considered high. If we look here at the short squeeze score from 0 to 100, it's an 83.35, which is pretty high. The other ones that are much higher do not have a catalyst like Peloton does. These were the shorts available to short. So as of 9 hours ago, they had 2.4 million available shares to short. As of an hour ago, 1.7 million. If we look here on the 4th, the 7th, the 8th, Simplex brought 932,000 put. IMC Chicago, 690,000. American Securities, 560,000. And Bank of America had currently 86,000. Now they are down to 7,000. Okay, so we go here, flow algo, to look at some equity in the dark pools. So there's been some activity here on Peloton. We see some activity here, 169,000 shares, 256,000 shares, 172,000, 250,000. Now let's take a look at the chart. So far, everything that we looked at, I would say that there's a potential of a short squeeze, but there has to be positive news real soon. Something real optimistic real soon to cause a spike and to squeeze out. Now, if there is a squeeze, I would guess that it would probably want to fill this drop here. Usually when it has like a big drop, there's what they call a gap to fill. So that would be kind of like a very strong area of potential if there was a squeeze. I'm not saying that there's going to be a squeeze, but we see here it was support here, came down, it was support here, came down, it was support here, and this finally broke as support and dropped all the way down. So if it were to squeeze, this area right here, the 80s, 81, 82, and 80, 78, would be the strongest resistance. You have the 200-day moving average, and you have this previous support, and it's the gap to fill. People want the next GameStop. I don't think it's going to be the next GameStop or AMC. There was a lot more going on during that situation. People were home, people were bored, people had extra money. The only positive thing now is income tax season. If people get some money and if they see this thing start to move, and if people start making connections of Peloton, like my cheesy thumbnail, Peloton and AMC and GameStop, maybe it can cause a squeeze. I don't think so right now, but I do think if this week, if there's some positive catalysts that come, a more confirmation that Apple or Amazon, well, maybe Amazon will purchase this company, it could cause a squeeze. Now, a stock that I think maybe has a higher potential of a short squeeze, Senseonics. Senseonics has a score of 95.78. They're due for positive news any minute now. If you want to learn more about Senseonics, click on the next video and I'll go over Senseonics. Thanks for watching.